Your face is being scanned right now, your fingerprints have been cataloged, your typing patterns are being analyzed and transmitted. And if you installed the latest Windows 11 update that dropped in February 2026, Microsoft quietly expanded its biometric data collection system to reach hardware that it could not access before, turning ordinary USB webcams and external fingerprint readers into enrollment devices for a system that was previously limited to hardware built directly into your machine. Most Windows 11 users have no idea this happened. It was not announced with a pop-up. It was not disclosed with a warning. It arrived as a line item in a technical update, changelog that almost nobody reads. And it connects to a chain of data collection behaviors built into Windows 11 by default that, when you see them laid out together in a single video, will make you understand why some of the most respected privacy researchers in the technology industry have described Microsoft's current approach to Windows as having no privacy whatsoever. Before this video is over, you are going to understand exactly what biometric data Windows 11 is collecting, how the new February 2026 expansion changed the scope of that collection, what the controversial recall feature is doing with your face and fingerprint authentication, and the exact 5 settings you need to kill right now to stop the most invasive tracking behaviors on your machine. Stay with me, because setting number 3 is one that Microsoft has buried in a location so obscure that most guides never even mention it. And it is the one responsible for something that should alarm every single Windows 11 user who types anything private on their keyboard. Let us start by establishing exactly what happened in the February 2026 Windows 11 update, because this is the development that connects the title of this video to a concrete, documented change that Microsoft made to your operating system without asking your permission. The update in question is KB5077181, Microsoft's February 2026 Patch Tuesday security rollup, along with the companion preview build KB5077239 that introduced the feature changes ahead of the mandatory rollout. Buried inside the feature additions for this update was a significant expansion of what Microsoft calls Windows Hello Enhanced Sign-In Security, which it abbreviates as ESS. Windows Hello ESS is the high security tier of Microsoft's biometric authentication system, the layer that uses dedicated hardware security chips, infrared cameras with liveness detection, and encrypted secure enclaves to process and protect your facial recognition and fingerprint data. Until the February 2026 update, enhanced sign-in security only worked with biometric sensors that were physically built into your device, integrated IR cameras in laptop screens, embedded fingerprint readers in laptop palm rests, those kinds of sensors that the manufacturer had specifically certified for secure biometric processing. External cameras and third-party fingerprint readers plugged in via USB were explicitly excluded from the ESS tier and limited to a lower security mode of Windows Hello operation. The February 2026 update changed this. Microsoft expanded Windows Hello ESS to support external USB webcams and peripheral fingerprint readers that have been certified to meet the ESS hardware requirements. After installing KB5077181, Windows will guide you through enrolling your external webcam or USB fingerprint reader into the enhanced sign. Insecurity system automatically when you connect a supported device. This means that if you have a webcam plugged into your desktop PC and that webcam meets Microsoft's hardware certification criteria, Windows 11 is now capable of scanning your face, processing your biometric data, and enrolling you into the same high-security biometric authentication framework that was previously limited to built-in device sensors. The expansion was framed entirely in security-positive terms in Microsoft's documentation. Stronger authentication for desktops and custom-built PCs, better anti-spoofing protection, extended access to biometric login for users who do not have laptop-integrated sensors. All of that framing is technically accurate, and none of it changes the fundamental question that privacy researchers have been asking about Windows Hello since its introduction, a question that the February expansion makes more urgent, not less urgent, because it applies to a broader population of devices than ever before. That question is this: Windows Hello stores biometric data locally on your device. Microsoft has consistently stated this in its official documentation. The biometric data does not roam, does not leave your device, and is not transmitted to Microsoft's servers. This is the company's stated position, and it is backed by the technical architecture of the system. But here is what that architecture does not address, and what the February 2026 expansion makes newly relevant for millions of additional users: the Windows Biometric Service, the background system service that manages all biometric authentication on Windows 11, generates diagnostic data, usage data, telemetry about how often biometric authentication is used, whether it succeeds or fails, what hardware it runs on, and how it performs. This diagnostic telemetry is transmitted to Microsoft as part of the broader Windows 11 telemetry pipeline, the same pipeline that operates by default on every Windows 11 installation, and that cannot be fully disabled on Home Edition without additional tools. The biometric data itself stays local. The data about how you use your biometrics, how often you scan your face, on what hardware, in what contexts, with what results, that data flows through the standard Windows telemetry channel. Paul Thurrott, one of the most respected and longest tenured Windows journalists in the industry, published an analysis of Windows 11 privacy in February 2026 that described the fundamental problem with precise and unambiguous language. He wrote that the problem with privacy in Windows 11 is easily stated. There's not any. Microsoft violates your privacy by default and does everything it can, using dark patterns and persistent pressure, to convince you to lower your defenses and allow it to gain more access to your personal information. He continued by explaining that Windows 11 comes with forced telemetry, inbox tracking, and advertising behaviors built in from the moment you first start the operating system, and that Microsoft provides surface-level controls that require extensive navigation through a deliberately fragmented settings architecture to find and configure. That assessment reflects the experience of every privacy researcher who has mapped what Windows 11 sends to Microsoft by default. The biometric expansion makes this picture more concerning because biometric data, by its nature, is the most sensitive category of personal information that any operating system can touch. Your face, your fingerprints, your iris patterns, these are not preferences that can be changed. They are permanent physical characteristics that identify you uniquely and that, if compromised in any context, cannot be rotated the way a password can. Now, let us talk about Windows Recall, because no video about Windows 11 biometric tracking in 2026 is complete without a full explanation of what this feature does and why its connection to biometric authentication is central to understanding the privacy stakes of the entire system. Windows Recall was announced by Microsoft in May 2024 and immediately generated what technology journalists described as a privacy backlash so intense that Microsoft was forced to pull the feature entirely and rebuild it from scratch before attempting a second launch. The original design was straightforward and terrifying in equal measure. Recall would take a screenshot of everything happening on your screen every few seconds, store those screenshots locally, run optical character recognition on every image to make the text searchable, and then allow you to search your entire computing history using natural language queries. Every document you opened, every website you visited, every message you sent, every banking screen you looked at, every private conversation you had. All of it captured, indexed, and made searchable by an AI system running on your own machine. The security researchers who examined the original implementation found that the database where Recall stored this comprehensive visual record of your entire computing life was completely unencrypted and stored in a location accessible to any process running on your machine with standard user permissions. A security researcher named Alexander Hagener built a proof-of-concept tool called Total Recall within days of the feature's announcement, demonstrating that any malware running on your computer could trivially access and exfiltrate the entire Recall database, instantly delivering a complete history of everything you had ever done on your computer to whoever controlled the malware. Microsoft pulled Recall and spent months rebuilding its security architecture. The relaunched version addresses the most catastrophic vulnerability of the original design. All screenshots and the database that indexes them are now encrypted using BitLocker or device. Encryption. The encryption keys are protected by the device's TPM chip. The entire processing system runs inside what Microsoft calls a virtualization-based security enclave, an isolated computational environment that is separated from the main operating system. And most critically for the purposes of this video, accessing Recall data now requires biometric authentication through Windows Hello. You cannot open Recall, view your screenshot history, or search your past activity without first authenticating with your face, your fingerprint, or a cryptographically backed PIN. This is where the biometric tracking story and the Recall story intersect in a way that every Windows 11 user needs to understand completely. Microsoft has designed Recall's security model such that your biometric authentication, your face scan or fingerprint scan, is the key that unlocks access to a comprehensive visual record of your entire digital life. Every document you have worked on, every website you have visited, every message you have sent and received, every financial transaction you have reviewed, every private conversation you have had on screen. All of this is stored in an encrypted database. Key on your device and your face or your fingerprint is the encryption key. From a technical security perspective, this design is defensible. The data is local, it is encrypted. Only you can access it with your biometrics. Microsoft cannot access it. Third parties cannot access it without your authentication. But from a privacy perspective, the design represents something that the technology industry has not previously asked ordinary consumers to accept. Your operating system is maintaining a continuous, comprehensive visual surveillance record of your entire computing life and asking you to enroll your biological characteristics as the key to that record. The question of whether you trust that architecture is not simply a question about Microsoft's current security implementation. It is a question about what happens if that architecture is ever compromised in ways that current security models do not anticipate. It is a question about what precedent this normalization of biometric-gated AI surveillance establishes for the next generation of operating systems and devices. And it is a question about whether you personally want a system that captures a screenshot of your screen every few seconds, even if that system is entirely local and encrypted. The answer to that question is a personal decision that this video is not going to make for you. What this video is going to do is tell you exactly how to disable every component of it if your answer is no. Here are the 5 settings you need to kill right now, starting with the most recently expanded and ending with the one that most guides completely miss. Setting number 1 is the Windows Biometric Service and Windows Hello Biometric Enrollment. This is the foundation of everything we have discussed so far. If you do not use biometric authentication to sign into your computer, there is no legitimate reason for the Windows Biometric Service to be running in the background on your machine. To disable it, press Windows key plus R to open the Run dialog, type services.msc, and press Enter. This opens the Windows Services Manager, which displays every background service running on your system. Scroll through the list until you find Windows Biometric Service. Double-click it to open its properties. In the Startup Type drop-down menu, change the setting from automatic to disabled. Click the Stop button to halt the service immediately if it is currently running. Click Apply, then click OK. Restart your computer. After the restart, the Windows Biometric Service will no longer initialize at startup and will no longer run in the background. This prevents Windows from accessing any biometric sensors on your device, including the cameras and fingerprint readers that the February 2026 update extended ESS enrollment to cover. If you have already enrolled biometric data in Windows Hello and want to remove it, go to Settings, then Accounts, then Sign-in Options. Under the Windows Hello Face or Windows Hello Fingerprint section, select the Remove button to delete the stored biometric data before disabling the service. Setting number 2 is Windows Recall and its snapshot collection system. This is the most comprehensive surveillance feature in Windows 11, and disabling it requires more than simply not enabling it in the first place, because on Copilot Plus PCs, recall components are installed at the operating system level, even when the feature is not actively capturing screenshots. To fully remove the recall components from your system, open the Start menu and search for Turn Windows Features on or off. Select the result to open the Windows Features dialog. Scroll through the list until you find the recall option. If it appears in your list, clear the checkbox next to it, click OK, and restart your computer when prompted. After the restart, the recall components will be removed from your device, and Windows will no longer have the infrastructure to capture and store snapshots of your activity. For users who do not see recall in the Windows Features list, you can verify its status by going to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Recall and Snapshots. If this menu exists on your device, it will show whether snapshot saving is enabled or disabled. Set it to disabled and ensure the Save Snapshots toggle is switched off. Additionally, from the same menu, click the Delete Snapshots button and confirm deletion to remove any screenshots that Recall may have already captured on your device. Setting number 3 is inking and typing personalization. And this is the setting that the title of this video's description of biometric tracking most directly applies to in a way that will alarm you when you understand what it is actually doing. Inking and typing personalization is the Windows 11 feature that collects your typing patterns, your keystrokes, the specific way your fingers move across a keyboard, your vocabulary, your writing style, data and the context stored on your device, and sends this data to Microsoft's servers to build what the company calls a personal user dictionary that improves autocorrect and word suggestion features. Your typing pattern is a biometric characteristic. Keyboard dynamics analysis, the study of how individual people type with unique timing patterns, rhythm, keystroke pressure, and finger movement sequences, is a recognized biometric identification technology used in security research and enterprise authentication systems. The way you type is as unique to you as your fingerprint in many contexts. And Windows 11 is collecting this data by default and transmitting it to Microsoft, not storing it locally, not keeping it on your device, but sending it to Microsoft's cloud infrastructure. To disable this, go to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Inking and Typing Personalization. Toggle the Personal Inking and Typing Dictionary switch to off. This immediately stops Windows from collecting and transmitting your typing patterns and vocabulary data to Microsoft servers. You will not lose any meaningful functionality by disabling this. Autocorrect and word suggestions will continue to work based on local processing rather than cloud-uploaded behavioral data. Setting number 4 is the diagnostics and feedback telemetry system, which is the primary pipeline through which Windows 11 transmits data about your system behavior. Your hardware usage, your application launches, your crash reports, and the diagnostic eye information generated by every service running on your machine, including the Windows biometric service data described earlier. To access these controls, go to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Diagnostics and Feedback. Under the Diagnostic Data section, you will see 2 options. Required diagnostic data sends the minimum set of data that Microsoft says it needs to keep Windows secure and updated. Optional diagnostic data sends everything, including browsing information, app usage data, and additional telemetry that Microsoft uses to improve its products and target advertising. Switch the setting to require diagnostic data if it is not already set there, and disable the optional diagnostic data toggle if it is enabled. Below the main diagnostic data control, you will find 3 additional toggles that deserve individual attention. The first is Tailored Experiences, which uses your diagnostic data to deliver personalized tips, advertisements, and recommendations from Microsoft throughout the Windows 11 interface. Turn this off. The second is Improve Inking and Typing. Recognition, which is a separate data collection pipeline for handwriting and keyboard input specifically, on top of the inking personalization setting described in Step 3. Turn this off as well. The third is the View Diagnostic Data option, and the Delete button that allows you to request deletion of the diagnostic data Microsoft has already collected from your device. Click Delete to request removal of your accumulated diagnostic data from Microsoft servers. Setting number 5 is the combination of activity history and location tracking, which together form the behavioral and geographic profile that Windows 11 builds about you over time. Activity history is the system that records your browsing activity, the documents you open, the applications you use, and the tasks you work on, and synchronizes this timeline of your behavior to your Microsoft account in the cloud, making it available across all your signed-in devices. This means that your Windows 11 machine is maintaining a synchronized, cloud-stored record of your computing behavior linked to your identity. To disable activity history, go to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Activity History. Uncheck the checkbox labeled Store My Activity History on this device. Also uncheck Send My Activity History to Microsoft. Scroll down and click the Clear Activity History for this account button to delete the behavioral history that has already been collected and synchronized to your Microsoft account. For location tracking, go to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Location. Toggle location services to Off to prevent Windows and all installed applications from accessing your device's location data through any of the methods Windows uses to determine your physical whereabouts, including GPS, Wi-Fi network analysis, IP address geolocation, and cellular signal triangulation. PC World documented in January 2026 that Windows 11 uses at least 4 separate methods to determine your location, all running simultaneously by default. Building a location history that is associated with your Microsoft account and accessible through Microsoft's privacy dashboard. Turning off location services disables all of these methods simultaneously. After completing these 5 settings, there is one additional layer of protection that every privacy-conscious Windows 11 user should address, and it connects directly to the biometric and behavioral data story this video has been building. That layer is the advertising ID, which is the unique identifier that Windows 11 assigns to your device and uses to link your behavior, your interests, your application usage, and your demographic data into an advertising profile that is shared with Microsoft's advertising partners. Go to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then General. Toggle off the setting labeled Let Apps Show Me Personalized Ads by using my advertising ID. Also toggle off Let Websites Show Me Locally Relevant Content by accessing my language list. Let Windows Improve start and search results by tracking app launches, and show me suggested content in the Settings app. These 4 toggles in the General Privacy section collectively control whether Windows 11 uses your behavioral data to build and maintain an advertising profile, whether your app launch history is analyzed to personalize your search experience, and whether Microsoft uses your data to push product recommendations throughout the Settings application itself. The combination of all 5 primary settings and the advertising ID controls described here represents a meaningful reduction in the surface area of data collection that Windows 11 performs on your device by default. It is important to be honest about what these changes do and do not accomplish, and the most respected Windows privacy researchers are consistent on this point. Required. Diagnostic telemetry, the baseline data transmission that cannot be disabled on Windows 11 Home Edition, will continue to operate even after you complete every step in this video. Windows license validation, security update checks, and threat intelligence feeds all require some level of communication between your device and Microsoft servers, and these cannot be eliminated without either switching to Windows 11 Enterprise Edition, where additional policy controls are available, or using a third-party network filtering tool that blocks Windows telemetry endpoints at the network level. What the 5 settings in this video do accomplish is significant and real. Disabling the Windows biometric service stops the biometric tracking infrastructure entirely on your device, including the newly expanded ESS enrollment system for USB cameras and peripheral fingerprint readers introduced in the February 2026 update. Removing or disabling Windows Recall eliminates the continuous screenshot surveillance system and its requirement to tie your biometric authentication to a comprehensive visual record of your computing life. Turning off inking and typing personalization stops the transmission of your keyboard dynamics and typing patterns, the behavioral biometric that most guides never discuss, to Microsoft's cloud systems. Reducing diagnostics to required only and disabling tailored experiences closes the primary pipeline through which your behavioral data reaches Microsoft's advertising and personalization infrastructure. And disabling activity history and location services removes the synchronized behavioral timeline and geographic tracking that Windows 11 maintains in your Microsoft account by default. The broader context of why these settings matter in 2026 specifically is one that technology journalists have been covering with increasing urgency and with declining ability to find optimistic interpretations. Microsoft shipped an update in February 2026, KB 507S239, that embedded what it calls Agent in Settings, an AI-powered assistant integrated directly into the Windows Settings application itself, representing the first time an agentic artificial intelligence model has operated at the operating system settings layer in any shipping version of Windows. And the same update expanded biometric enrollment to external USB hardware. It expanded cross-device resume, a feature that synchronizes your active tasks and open files between your Windows PC and your Android phone. And it continued the progressive deployment of Recall to Copilot plus PC users worldwide. Each of these features individually has a plausible user benefit framing. Together, they represent a consistent and accelerating pattern in which the boundaries between your local computing environment and Microsoft's cloud infrastructure are being systematically dissolved, one update at a time, and the dissolution is happening through features that are enabled by default and that require deliberate, technically informed action to reverse. The regulatory dimension of this story is one that American users rarely hear discussed, but that is becoming increasingly significant as privacy enforcement agencies in Europe and elsewhere begin scrutinizing the specific behaviors that Windows 11 engages in by default. The General Data Protection Regulation, the European Union's landmark privacy law, places biometric data in a special, low category of sensitive personal information that requires explicit, informed consent before it can be collected or processed. When Windows 11's inking and typing personalization feature transmits keyboard dynamics data to Microsoft, it is transmitting behavioral biometric data. When the Windows biometric service generates diagnostic telemetry about biometric authentication events, it is generating records connected to biometric system usage. European privacy authorities have examined Microsoft's approach to Windows data collection on multiple occasions and have expressed concerns that the level of control provided to users does not meet the meaningful consent standards that GDPR requires for sensitive data categories. American users do not have the same legal framework protecting them at the federal level, which means the 5 settings in this video represent their primary practical protection rather than a floor of legal minimums that Microsoft is already required to meet. The specific expansion of Windows Hello ESS to external USB cameras in the February 2026 update carries additional implications worth examining carefully. When Windows Hello ESS operated exclusively with built-in device sensors, the population of users with biometric authentication capability was limited to people who had purchased devices specifically designed and certified with integrated biometric hardware. The February 2026 expansion means that any user with a USB webcam connected to their Windows 11 desktop, which describes an enormous proportion of the remote worker population, who set up cameras for video calls during the pandemic years and have kept them connected to their systems ever since, may now be presented with prompts to enroll those cameras into the biometric authentication system. The prompts are not mandatory. The enrollment is opt-in. But Microsoft's documented history of using what Thurrott called dark patterns and persistent prompting to drive adoption of features, users have not requested means that optional enrollment prompts have a way of becoming adopted by users who click through them without fully understanding what they are agreeing to. The result is an expanding population of Windows 11 users with their facial characteristics enrolled in a biometric system they may not have consciously chosen to join, connected to an authentication framework that is now also the key that unlocks Recall's comprehensive screenshot database of their entire computing history. There is a specific population of Windows 11 users for whom the combination of these features creates a risk profile that most consumer privacy discussions do not adequately address. Professionals who work with legally privileged or confidential material, attorneys, accountants, healthcare workers, journalists, therapists, financial advisors, anyone whose daily computing involves confidential client information or legally protected communications are operating in a particularly exposed position on a default Windows 11 installation. The continuous screenshot capture that Recall performs is not distinguish between a routine email and a document containing confidential client strategy. It does not recognize the difference between a public web browsing session and a secure client portal. It captures everything, encrypts everything, and stores everything locally. The local encryption and biometric access requirement addressed the most catastrophic external attack scenario that the original implementation enabled. It did not address the scenario where a subpoena, a device seizure, a divorce proceeding, a litigation hold, or any other legal mechanism requires production of the contents of a device. The question of whether locally stored, device-encrypted recall data is discoverable in legal proceedings is one that legal scholars and technology attorneys are beginning to grapple with, and it is a question with no settled answer as of March 2026. For these users in particular, and for any user who handles information they would not be comfortable seeing captured in a screenshot every 5 seconds and stored indefinitely on their device, the complete removal of recall components through the Windows Features dialog described in setting number 2 is not merely a privacy preference. It is a professional and potentially a legal necessity. The 5 settings framework in this video addresses the full range of tracking behaviors from the routine, such as advertising ID and activity history, to the extraordinary, such as continuous AI-powered screenshot surveillance gated behind biometric authentication. Each layer matters, and the decision about which layers to disable is one that every Windows 11 user deserves to make with full information rather than discovering after the fact that their operating system had been performing these behaviors in the background while they worked. Paul Thurrott's February 2026 analysis of this pattern reached a conclusion that deserves direct acknowledgement because it captures the stakes precisely. He described Microsoft's approach as using dark patterns and outright harassment to convince users to lower their defenses and allow the company to gain more access to their personal information, and characterized the purpose of this access as building behavioral profiles to sell to advertisers and target users with Microsoft's own advertising. He noted that flipping the settings switches Microsoft provides offers some level of protection, but does not solve the underlying problem completely, because Microsoft's required diagnostic telemetry continues operating regardless of user preference settings on Home and Pro. Additions. The full resolution, he argued, requires either an enterprise edition of Windows with the additional policy controls it provides, or a third-party tool that operates at the network layer rather than the settings layer to block telemetry endpoints comprehensively. This distinction between surface-level settings control and genuine network-level blocking is something every privacy-conscious Windows user should understand. When you toggle off optional diagnostic data in the Settings app, you are sending Microsoft a preference signal. You're instructing the operating system to reduce what it transmits, but the implementation of that preference is controlled by Microsoft's own code running on your machine, and the history of Windows updates reversing privacy settings that users have configured is well documented. The February 2026 update and the updates preceding it have repeatedly re-enabled settings that users had previously disabled, a behavior that Microsoft characterizes as restoring defaults after major updates and that privacy researchers characterize as a systematic pattern of preference overriding. This is why the 5 settings in this video need to be verified after every major Windows 11 cumulative update, not just configured once and assumed to persist indefinitely. The 15 minutes you spend running through these settings checks after each Patch Tuesday is the maintenance cost of maintaining a Windows 11 installation that respects your preferences rather than Microsoft's defaults. The 5 settings in this video represent the maximum control available to ordinary Windows 11 Home and Pro users, using only the tools Microsoft provides natively within the operating system. For users who want to go further and achieve more durable, update-resistant privacy protection, tools like O&O Shutup 10 and Windows Privacy Tweaker provide additional registry and policy controls that extend well beyond what the Settings app exposes directly, and they operate entirely within the Windows environment, without requiring network-level filtering hardware or enterprise licensing. These tools are widely used, actively maintained, and broadly recommended across the privacy-focused Windows community. Adding them to the configuration completed by executing the 5 settings in this video creates the most comprehensive privacy protection available on Windows 11 without switching operating systems entirely or purchasing an enterprise license. Here is the complete sequence to execute right now. Laid out as a checklist, you can follow step by step without needing to pause and reread any section. Open services @MC. And disable the Windows biometric service if you do not use facial recognition or fingerprint login. Go to Turn Windows Features on or off and uncheck Recall to remove the screenshot surveillance system and its biometric access requirement. Navigate to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Inking and Typing Personalization, and disable the Personal. Dictionary to stop your keyboard dynamics from being transmitted to Microsoft. Go to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Diagnostics and Feedback, switch to Required Diagnostic Data Only, disable Tailored Experiences, and improve inking and typing recognition, and delete your accumulated diagnostic data. Go to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Activity History, and disable both activity history options, then go to Location and turn off location services entirely, and then navigate to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then General, and disable all 4 advertising and tracking toggles on that page. These steps take under 20 minutes to complete from start to finish on any Windows 11 machine. They do not affect the core functionality of Windows 11 in any way that will disrupt your daily use. Applications will still work, Windows Update will still operate, your computer will still start up, run your programs, connect to the internet, and do everything you depend on it to do. The only things that change are the data flows that were running in the background without your knowledge, transmitting your face scans, your typing patterns, your location history, your behavioral timeline, and your screenshot surveillance data to Microsoft's infrastructure while you worked. Those flows will stop. And your computer, for the first time since you installed Windows 11, will be running in a configuration that reflects your preferences rather than Microsoft's. Subscribe to stay updated as Microsoft continues deploying Recall more broadly, and as the Windows 11 26H2 update later in 2026 potentially reshapes some of these privacy controls, for better or for significantly worse. Share this video with every Windows 11 user you know who does not yet realize that their typing patterns, their facial scan data, their location history, and their behavioral timeline are all being handled by features they never consciously enabled and may not have been clearly informed about during their Windows 11 setup experience. Drop a comment below telling us which of these 5 settings surprised you most, because based on the community responses we have seen across previous privacy videos, if your answer is setting number 3, the typing and keyboard dynamics one, you are an extremely large and very surprised company. We will see you in the very next one.